Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Iron Chapel. My name is Taylor Woodland, and since this is my first episode, I'm just going to go ahead and give a disclaimer that even though the name is Iron Chapel, this podcast is a health and fitness podcast. Health and fitness is kind of broad, and I plan on covering a bunch of different things within those topics. That includes mental health, that includes physical health, nutrition, supplements that you might be taking, and any other questions that might pop up as we go along. I decided to go with the Iron Chapel because, honestly, the gym is one of those places where I find peace. That may not be the case for everyone, but it is one of my goals to help people not only feel more comfortable in the gym, because there's a big stigma about how accepting people in the gym might be or might not be. And I feel that a lot of people that I've worked with up to this point have thought that they were going to be judged, when in reality, when you're in the gym, people are so distracted by what they're doing and by thinking that you're judging them that they don't pay attention to what you're doing. Today I'm going to kind of start off with a topic that has been on my mind a lot recently and may not initially look like it has anything to do with the gym until I actually get into it. And that topic is failure. Failure is something that I've had on my mind a lot recently. And to kind of kick things off, I'm going to talk about how we focus on failure in the gym. Failure in the gym can be used in a few different ways. If you're familiar with any kind of powerlifting style workouts or any bodybuilder style workouts, you've experienced failure before. If you haven't, then I think it's something that's worth giving a shot. Now, I personally focus more on a powerlifting style of exercise. And when it comes to failure, what that typically means is that I'm focused on going for a 1 rep max, going for maximal effort in not just my lifts, but especially those lifts where I'm seeing what progress I've made. Now, part of going for that 1 rep max is I push myself until I cannot lift the weight anymore. That means that in between those sets, I'm taking long rest periods, and then I physically cannot move the weight anymore because it's just too heavy. Doesn't matter which lift it is, whether it's a deadlift, squat, or bench, the weight is just too heavy to move, and it will not go anywhere. This looks a little different depending on what kind of lift I'm doing. When it comes to a deadlift, it's pretty simple. The weight will not come off the floor, and that is that. When it comes to a squat, usually what it means is you get down into the hole, and you can't get out. You're down at the bottom with that weight on your back, and your only choice is to bail out of the weight. When it comes to a bench press, it depends on whether or not you have a spotter. If you have a spotter, it means that spotter helps take over some of the load and re-racks the weight. Now, if you're like me, who often pushes that limit without a spotter, sometimes you wind up with a weight sitting on your chest and you gotta roll it down your body. Not very comfortable, especially when you're starting to push really heavy weight. Rolling that thing down your body is not comfortable at all, and I don't recommend it. It is kind of scary sometimes to bench without a spotter toward that maximal end. Now, when it comes to failure in a bodybuilder style of training, I have less experience in this because I don't usually trade into this kind of failure. But usually your goal is to fail within that set. You pick a weight that you're working with. You go in that set doing specifically bicep curls in this instance, and you go until your bicep can't lift that weight anymore. Usually what that means is you drop the weight, pick up a lighter weight, and you continue doing bicep curls until you fail with that weight. Those are called drop sets. That's one form of failure training. Or you could just do training to failure where you fail that one time, and that is where you fail. To go back to drop sets, though, one thing that I've noticed, not just with myself but also with clients, is that when you hit failure that first time, that threshold for failure drops. So specifically in drop sets, if you hit that failure, you drop the weight because that threshold to failure is dropped. However, when you're doing a powerlifting style of workout, you're going for maximal lift. You hit a lift that you can't push anymore, you fail, that threshold to failure drops in that instance as well. What that means is that you could drop the weight, go for that same 1 rep max, something that you've already hit before, and because you've dropped that threshold, you'll still hit failure in that next set. All of these are different ways that you can implement failure training into your training. I think it's important to pick a few different lifts that you want to maximize and take those lifts to failure, because I believe firmly that there are two different camps of people that go to the gym. There are the camp that push themselves too hard every single time they go, and then there's the camp that never really get to experience pushing themselves hard enough. So pick a lift that you're really comfortable with, and this week, take it to failure. Before you start that, give a guess at how many reps it's going to take you to fail that lift with that weight. And then keep going until you physically cannot lift that weight anymore, and see where you're at. See if you have a good idea of how close to failure you're actually getting. Now, to bring in some scientific studies, research indicates that if we're within 5 reps of failure, we are going to maximize our muscle hypertrophy and strength. That means that could be anywhere from 5 until failure. In that range, you see varying responses, and honestly, it comes down to each individual. There's always going to be nuance, not just in studies, but also in how we apply it into our lives. We try things, and we see if, one, we like it, if we're willing to do it again, and if it actually works for us as individuals, because just because something works in a study doesn't mean it's going to work for us individually. Most studies rely on a majority getting some result from the thing that they're doing in the study. Majority can be 51%. 49% is still a good chunk of people, and a good chunk of you might fall into that 49%, regardless of what kind of study it is. There's benefit to doing lightweight exercises. There's benefit to doing heavyweight exercises. And there's benefit to going to failure. One of the things that I know that I don't really enjoy doing, and so every once in a while I do it just because I know I don't enjoy it, is doing those drop sets. Going to failure, dropping the weight, going to failure, dropping the weight, going to failure again. Now, the reason failure is on my mind recently is growing up, I was fairly gifted when it came to school. When it came to academics, I never really struggled. Only time I failed when it came to academics was when I just didn't try. And then I could tell myself that I failed because I didn't try, not because I put forth any real effort and actually legitimately failed. I went most of my life without experiencing real failure, and I actually very clearly remember the job that I experienced failure for the first time in. I went out to the East Coast, North Carolina, went to do door-to-door sales for DirecTV, and I was utterly miserable at it. The one time that I almost got a sale, he wound up canceling the next day. That's what it was. We settled on a deal, and then the next day he called and canceled the order. And so the one sale that I thought I had gotten, didn't even get that one. I only lasted about a month. And then they told me You either need to pack your bags and head back home, or you need to start making sales. So I packed my bags and went back home. It was the first time I had failed in a job. Since then, I've failed many different times, and I've failed in many different things, but one of the things that the gym has taught me, specifically training to failure has taught me, is how to recover from failure. How to not just fail and pack my bags and give up and go home. Although sometimes that is the right option. Sometimes packing your bags and going home is the right option to pick up and find something better. Find something that you're passionate about. Too often, I think I get caught up in just trying to make it. Going from day to day and never really putting myself out there. So that at the end of the day I can say, things didn't go my way, it's just because I didn't try. In fact, starting this podcast, doing this first shoot, is one of those things. I've been talking about doing this for, I think I first started talking about doing this about a year ago. And I kept putting it off because I really just didn't want to put myself out there. I didn't want to shoot my first episode, put it out there, and realize no one wanted to listen to me, no one wanted to hear what I had to say. Reality is I might put this podcast episode out and no one will listen to it at all. Doesn't matter. Part of what I'm doing this for is for me. Part of what I'm doing this for is to practice failing. If I fail in putting out this episode and not getting success, I'm just going to pick myself back up and try again. Because I do think that the message that I have to give, not just about going to the gym and health and fitness in general, but the experiences that I've had in my life are something that can help other people. I don't know who, but that's part of what I love about personal training. Right now, I'm coaching at a commercial gym. I'm not going to name the name. And I've been there for about a year now. And I honestly wasn't sure how I was going to like in-person training because I had done a little bit of training with the military. I worked as a PTO, which is basically a personal trainer without most of the knowledge that I got from my certified personal training certification program. So I had just the same responsibility, but without nearly any of the knowledge. I did that for a few years, and it was mostly small group fitness, where we focused a little bit on strengthening, but then a lot on cardio, because the big part of our PT test is the running part. So I wasn't sure how I was going to like in-person training. And then I started at that gym, and I have absolutely fallen in love with personal training. Because, yes, I get to help people with exercises. I get to help people with weightlifting. But then everybody's unique, comes into the gym with different things that they might be stressing about that day, different things that they might be experiencing that week. And I get to help them understand how to take what we're learning in the gym and apply it into their lives. I get to make a real difference on individual lives, and I don't know, in a lot of ways it makes a big difference in my life too. I learn from clients and I gain all kinds of experience. But I think that's going to be about it for this episode. As I keep going, it'll get more organized. My thoughts will get more organized, and hopefully we'll be able to see this grow together. I'll catch you next week. In the meantime, remember, challenge this week. Take some sort of weight for some sort of lift that you're very comfortable in. Guess at the beginning how many reps it's going to take you to fail, and go until you fail. And then get back to me. Let me know how many reps you actually took and how many reps you guessed. Let's see how close to failure you really are. I'll see you next week.